Welcome to our 9:30 a.m. strategic planning meeting. It is November 20th, 2023. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner French is on Zoom. And we will go ahead and get started. And then we have our executive management team here as well. So Mr. Chase, you get to lead us off.
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Chase, Parks, Recreation, and Golf Director. I am very pleased to have MTLA Landscape Architects, or Mike Terrell and Jeff Stilts, here with us today to present our master plan for the West Plains Community Park. And there's been quite a bit of effort, a ton of excitement, as you might imagine, from the community. And they were brought on to help work through this planning process. And as a component of that, they also worked with our naming policy. So towards the end, they'll mention, talk a little bit about that and recommend a name for the park. So without any further ado, I'm going to have Mike and Jeff jump on up here and take over from here.
Thank you, Doug. Commissioners, I'm Mike Terrell with MTLA. I'll be presenting this morning. Just to give a really quick overview of the existing site, it's out on the West Plains near the Four Lakes interchange. It's directly across the Melville from what used to be the Fairways Golf Course, is now the Plains Golf Course. 10-acre site, was previously agriculture farmed and had a single-family house and a few other outbuildings on it. Those buildings have been removed as part of the demolition in preparation for the master plan. The north side is the existing golf course, which portions of that is turning into residential. So there's a lot of residential development happening on the north side of Melville. East is a single family residence on a large lot. South and west, single agriculture and single family residences as well. Next slide, please. So our schedule, we've had a really busy summer. We got a little bit of a slow start getting started this year. We've crammed a lot of information, a lot of public outreach, and a lot of stakeholder interviews into the last 5 months. We started with stakeholder interviews in July, moved on to a public survey that was online, which we had a really great response that happened in August and early September. Open house number 1 covered the same information that occurred on the survey. So we got information online and then had an open house with folks in the neighborhood at the Inland Power's office. We established a project website so we could communicate with folks, and so we gathered information and gathered email addresses so we could communicate with the neighborhood as well. Open house number 2 with the master plan concepts review, Parks Advisory Committee presentation. Open house number 3 with a draft concept review happened in October. And then a real high mark on it because the property is south of Melville, which is outside the urban growth boundary. And so it's not served by Spokane. So we didn't have any water service at the time. And so big check mark in the box in order to move forward was in late October was included in Spokane's water service. So it'll be served by City of Spokane Water. We had a follow-up meeting on November 1st with the Park Advisory Committee meeting. And then we're here today with you to give you an update on where we're at. Next slide, please. So we've talked to a whole bunch of stakeholders in the West Plains area, City of Cheney Parks and Recreation, City of Medical Lake Parks and Recreation, City of Airway Heights Parks and Recreation, West Plains Little League, Skyhawk Sports Academy, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. Most conversations have been with the West Plains Little League in terms of what they need for fields in that part of the county. Next slide. So part of the community engagement was an online survey. We ended up with 194 respondents over time. So we really aggressively got the word out in a lot of different ways. Staff was really instrumental in helping us get the word out to the community. We also one of the things that helped a lot was engaging the homeowners association in the neighborhood to get on their mailing list. So we feel like the response rate was really good for this level of park communication. And initially, what is it that you like to do? And number 1 was walk and hike. 2 was play. 3 is leisure. 4 sports, and 5 as exercise. So that started to create the framework, and a lot of additional information. We can provide the whole results of the survey if you're interested in more detail. Next slide, please. So community health, number 2, basically we'd gathered all that information from number 1 and from the online survey, and we created 4 master plans. And we created 4 master plans because we had a lot of really great input, and it was hard to narrow it down at this point into 2, which is what we initially were going to do. And it ranged in terms, so one of the things that we was an unknown at the time was whether we were going to have water service and how much water we were going to have available. So it ranged in terms of having a more traditional park with a lot of grass area to what is number 4 down in the lower right-hand corner, which had synthetic turf, because one of the things we wanted to investigate is if we didn't have water, was synthetic turf an option? And so as we went forward, we narrowed this down based upon budget and community needs as well. We also at this open house, we had a children's playground design, like my dream playground. We had kids sit down and draw out what they would like to see, and that started to form the basis of what we were going to design with the playground as well. And about 27 community members attend this one, so we had really good turnout as well. Next slide. So we narrowed those 4 concepts through conversations and with staff and review of what we received from the community and that feedback at that community open house as well. And we had 217 responses to an online survey talking about these two options. Concept A on the left has basically a ball field with an infield, and it just opens up to the rest of the park, so it's very flexible. Had a lot of parking, about 96 parking spaces, some trails, perimeter trails, a basketball court, 4 pickleball courts, a playground area, a large shelter. And one of the things that we found that we needed to accommodate in this, and looking at the layout of the project, is we have a drainage passing through this property. And so we've got drainage coming from across from Fruitvale Road that we needed to accommodate. And so that's what you see between the parking lot and the park as well on both concepts. Concept B has a more formal field on the west side with a larger sports field. And so we started to narrow that down. And what we found, and in addition to that, in concept B was a dog park. And so as we started to look at what the responses were for A and B, we found that most of the comments, because we had free comments at the end of the survey, most of the comments were referencing the dog park. So concept B got the most votes, and we believe that was because it included a dog park for the most part. Next slide. So open house number 3, we took basically a preferred master plan, took it out to the community. We'll show you pictures of that. We also had a kids drawing session, again, to get feedback from the kids on what they like to do. And it's really interesting, what kids like to do hasn't changed very much. Even though we create really cool playgrounds and everything, we get things like monkey bars and things that spin and swings. And so those are great input we got as well. And that's the foundation that we're building towards on with the master plan as well. We had about 18 community members attend as well. Next slide. And so here's a little bit of what we got from the kids, which was really awesome. Tire swings and spinny things and crawl through tubes and slides and monkey bars. Next slide. So this is a preferred master plan that we're going forward with. So I'll start with up in the northwest corner is the dog park, the parking lot. And so what we've done is we have a master plan that is basically fulfills everything that we would like to include in the master plan. But we're also balancing it with budget that we have. So in terms of figuring out what we can build and how we can build it within the budget we have, we've narrowed things down significantly in some ways, but still keeping the basic information, basic master plan that meets the needs of the community and the desires of the community as well. And again, so dog park which got a lot of response. parking lot to serve all the activities. We're holding back for the future with the basketball courts for pickleball courts and a large shelter. The playground has been scaled down somewhat, but is still very significant. We can include all the things that the kids would want to see as well. Future parking lot expansion is available as well. But the field is fully fenced with nets around it so that activities can happen in the baseball field and protect the players in the other field, because those open green spaces for soccer and other multi-use sports are really important. We've kept the perimeter trail, which going back to our initial survey is walking, and those are really important. And so it's about 1/3 of a mile for that walking trail. So we've really got a great opportunity for folks to walk around the park and enjoy it as well. And our goal was to minimize the amount of grass area that we're irrigating and maintaining as much as possible, and creating a lot of natural space that over time will take less maintenance and certainly less water. Cost of the water in this neighborhood is really expensive. City of Spokane water is really expensive. So we've gone through a process to make sure that we're designing it in such a way that we can minimize water costs, and certainly working with staff to make sure maintenance is manageable as well. So next slide. This gives you a little bit of an idea what it's looking at. We're looking from the northwest to the southeast when it's fully built out, full parking lots. Shelter's the larger red building in the middle with the playground off to the left of that, and the dog park here in the corner. So one of the other things from this, you can see we've got residents to the east. We've got some residents further to the south. We're trying to concentrate all the heavy activity, a lot of activity near Melville, so we don't have to extend roads and driveways a lot, but also buffering our neighbors and being good neighbors as well. So next slide. This is a shot looking kind of through the swale. This is natural. So we've got this break between the parking lots and the playgrounds. And so we can keep kids in the playgrounds for the most part, but also maintain this natural drainage. So you get this sense of transition as you come into the park. You go, I've left the parking lot. I'm now in the park. Next slide. So this is a shot again. It shows a little bit more of what the playground might look like. The larger shelter, the small building on the right is a restroom with four different family restrooms. And one of the things that gets long-term management wise is that you can lock up 3 of the restrooms and leave one open, so you only have to maintain those or transition when something gets damaged due to vandalism or something, so that you can keep something else open. So you can kind of rotate through the restroom. So those are the things that we've been working closely with staff to try and establish as well. Next slide. And we have a large event space where food trucks can come in, because there's not a lot of opportunity for this neighborhood to gather in a spot. So to create that sense of community gathering in this neighborhood. So this is the spot. So this community park will fill that need. Next slide. So in broad overall terms, we've gone through cost estimating at every level. So throughout the summer, we've been cost estimating every single option, and we've come down to this cost estimate, which is basically base bid, which gets utilities, water, electrical, parking, as we've shown, at $4.75 million. That includes things like the loop walking path and other things I pointed out, a perimeter fence. We have alternates that we pulled out and identified that could be included: expanding the parking lot, adding the sports courts, the pickleball and basketball court, so one of the things, so alternate C is we have overhead power on Melville. So we'd like to, if we could at all possible, bring that underground just to make it a little bit less conflict with trees and clean up that frontage. And then we have water service from Northwest Development. That's a deductive alternate. We don't know where the water service is coming from now because we just got approval to connect to City of Spokane, but with the development going on Northwest, there's potential we could have a shorter run than what we've estimated right now. And then adding the large shelter, and then also adding a small shelter as well. So with that, next slide. So this gives you, we started with a construction estimate of 6.1 million approximately, and these are the reductions we went through with the master plan, about 1.4 million in reductions to come to the $4.7 million. Next slide. So one of the things that we have today is, so when we started with this, West Plains Community Park was the working model for the name for the park as we went through when we were hired, and certainly we took it out to the community just so that everybody knows where it is. It's one of the advantages of naming something kind of by geographic. Everybody has a sense of where it is in the neighborhood. One of the things that we did do is we went out to another survey. We met with the Parks Advisory Committee and staff and said, hey, here's a list of names. What do you guys think? And we narrowed it down to West Plains Park and also to Camas Meadow Park, which is Camas Meadow. There's a lot of Camas Meadows in the West Plains, but also we have, with that drainage, we have an opportunity to have a Camas Meadow on site and restore that. And that's one of the things that we met with Washington Fish and Wildlife about as well. So the community survey, we got 54 responses, which was a great response for a naming. And then, so 60% of the votes came up with Camas Meadow Park. So that's kind of where we are in terms of naming as well. With that, I think next slide is any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Wow, lots of work, lots of surveys. Did you find that those online survey mechanisms were pretty helpful? It looks like you got a couple hundred or more responses on every single survey.
We did, and we did find them really, really helpful. And it actually helps if you have an open house with the same information available at the same time you're doing the survey. So and we might have people double counting and voting more than once, but not really. I think one of the important things, our lesson as we do more and more of these, is that getting into the existing neighborhood organizations like HOAs and say, okay, you've got an email list, send it out to your folks and get them involved. And I think that's the important thing. So it has been super helpful. And for instance, from the very beginning, we didn't have a dog park. And so at the end, we have a dog park. And so that's based upon the community survey.
Oh, that's great. So what you're saying here on this map then is that there's a future expansion of the parking lot.
Yes.
As needed.
Yep.
But that's not covered in and then the pickleball courts are also a future
Exactly.
expansion. Okay.
And so we spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how do we identify things that could be future expansion pieces that wouldn't disrupt the whole park. And so like adding the additional parking lot, you can come in, you can work that from one end. We can actually access from Fruitvale to do the basketball courts and the pickleball courts so that we can build out that way as well and keep the park open. So what we looked at is if, 15, 20 years or maybe even sooner, when these things come online or there's funding available, then you don't have to completely disrupt the whole park to build them in.
And I see Commissioner French, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say to Mike Terrell, what a great job your team did in this project. I had the opportunity to attend a couple of the open houses and stuff and talk to some of the residents out there and stuff. But I just think that the job you did here was just really commendable. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done. And Doug Clark, as always, you just walk on water in terms of being able to deliver. I just started to advocate for a park on the West Plains 12 years ago, and it only took 12 years to get to this. But I got to tell you, with the product you've developed and stuff, you made the wait worthwhile. So just very excited to be able to move this project forward and be able to provide a vital infrastructure need to this growing part of the county, and particularly the growing part of the unincorporated part of the county and stuff. So just kudos to the entire team for a great job. I just couldn't be more happy and more impressed with the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I just have to say thank you. I think when we knew we needed to get some parkland out on the West Plains with all the development that was going on. And so, it was crucial. So actually, it's exciting to see what it's looking like and what the potential is for the citizens out there. So thank you for all your hard work, and Doug, thank you as well. Any other questions? Oh,
It looks
Mr.
fantastic.
Jordan.
That's all I'll say.
You really packed a lot into what really isn't an enormous amount of space. You pack a lot in there. That's great.
yeah, and I think it's going to be on us then to figure out how we fund the rest of it. So it's a full use space, because as we know,
Right.
pickleball courts are at a premium.
They
Uh,
they are very
I can
desirable.
see, yes,
Mhm.
that being something that won't be able to wait 15, 20 years. We'll have to
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah,
it
and
much sooner.
we try to be very intentional and strategic, looking at those items that may be much easier to add at a later date, and trying to maximize the improvements with the funds that we do have in hand. And so that's hopefully you can see that through the design here, and we are optimistic we'll be able to, based on current estimates, and they will continue to evolve, that we'll be able to cover those items outside of the dotted lines here in the base bid.
Very good. Commissioner French, I see you raised your hand again.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just, it was an oversight on my part when I was handing out kudos, but I do want to do a shout out to the city council for the city of Spokane, and city staff for being able to come to the table and partner with us in terms of providing water to this park. Without it, this would be a much more challenging project and stuff. And I do know that the city council approved it, I think, unanimously and stuff. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them for being good partners with us and trying to bring this park to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, if there's no additional questions, we'll continue on a path forward. Okay,
Very good. I don't see any at this point in time. So thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, that's going to take us. I see Randy Bischoff coming down to a discussion on property tax options and budget. Always fun.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're going to start out. We had a request to discuss. I know we will vote, or you will bring this up next Tuesday or at the public hearing, but this is just more of your internal discussions before that public hearing in regard to property tax. So we'll go to the next page, Ron. So this is the 24 property tax. This is the presentation that we will have at next week's public hearing. This page, just really more information for the public, but you will see that the average median house in the full county this year is assessed at $432,900. And in the unincorporated area, that average assessment is $545,700. Next slide. Here's kind of a history for the last, since 2018, for the general fund. The red is what the general fund has received from its property tax. The blue would be any monies received in a road shift. So we did that in 4 of the last 6 years. Next slide. This is just showing that our levy rate is going down. Our legal limit is $1.80. We are projecting this next year, we will be under 70 cents per thousand. And that's really a function because the property tax itself, as you saw in the preceding slide, has been very basically flat. But as our property values increase, that is why our levy rate is decreasing. So we do have a lot of capacity in regard to the legal limit as to where we are. Next slide. Here's just some summary options. There are many, you can do a lot of them. These are just summarized. For example, if you did zero increase, no road shift. Today, the annual based or last year, the average household would have paid $303 in property taxes for the general fund. If we do 0 and 0, that would go down to about 302, or basically stay flat. If you did a 1%, that annual charge would go up to $305. And then you can see also if you did road shift from the road fund to the general fund, this would be, of course, at the maximum road shift, but you can do any number that you would like, and those numbers would then change correspondingly. Next slide, Ron. The second item is the conservation futures. This is the fund where we go and buy open space. Recently we just bought some land out the Dishman Hills area. You have more that you will be buying that you're currently in the process for in the city of Spokane. This fund, we did have to borrow some money this year to do that purchase out at Dishman Hills. And so this will be helping to pay that monies back. As you can see, the levy rate on this one is 3 cents. Our legal limit is 6 1/4 cents per thousand. Next slide. If we did a 0% increase last year, the people paid $11.06 for conservation futures, and this is across the whole county. If we do no increase, that will go down to $11.03. If we did a 1% increase, it would go to $11.14, or their taxes would go up 8 cents for a year. If we actually went to our full legal limit, it would go up to $11.24. And that it would be taking the 1% that we didn't do last year. Next slide. For the county roads, basically the same thing. You can see we have a declining levy rate because the taxes have remained flat. County road, your legal limit is $2.25 per thousand. We will be under 91 cents this coming year. Next slide. Again, this is just paid by people in the unincorporated area. Last year, the average household paid for $490 of tax. With the 0% increase, it will actually go up by $6 to $496. If you did a 1% increase, it would go to $501. Next slide. I think that's probably it for this one. Okay. So that's just kind of a summary. I'm going to hand out, and Al, I've emailed them to you. So this is the just kind of the projection sheet in more detail if we want to get into deeper discussion. And also, I've been asked by Commissioner Jordan, just what was the history of our decisions or the board's decisions for the last 10 years. So I'll hand those out now. So I can pull this up on screen if you want, if there's any discussions you want to have. I would have to share. It would be the 24 levy spreadsheet. That one there, yes. So if there's any discussions you want to have, again, this is broken out with each section individually because you will next week have 3 decisions to make. Actually, you'll have four. It'll be whether you want to do any increases either in the county general, the county conservation futures, or the county roads, and then also if you want to do a road shift. So you basically have four decisions next week. If you wanted to have a discussion today, this is not a decision meeting. That will be at the public meeting, but that was the request, and so I will shut up now.
So just clarifying, the four decision points are whether to do the 1% for each of the three areas and then the road shift.
Yes, and actually that you can take up to your banked capacity. So you could do more than a 1% because we do have some bank capacity. For example, last year we did not do a 1% in the county general. So you can go up to that. If you look under the ending bank capacity under the 0% increase, that 966,000 is the most that you could
Oh, I see.
increase without a vote.
Commissioner Jordan.
Thanks, Randy, for the history. I'm learning all this for the first time, but just to make sure I understand. So the bank capacity, does that come from 2019 and 2023 when there was no 1% on the general fund? Is that how that works? That it kind of saves from previous years where you didn't take the 1%?
The bank capacity for the general fund, that would be the capacity going into 2025 if you did a 0% increase for 24. So that is really the capacity from 23 and the earned capacity in 24.
But not 2019.
2019, that capacity was used up when we did a road levy shift.
Oh, so they can connect.
That road levy shift reduces the capacity back to zero.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all of this detail. I printed it off. I made my notes. So I'm just trying to understand. So just bottom line, if the board chose to do the 1% increase, you're saying that for unincorporated residents, it would be about a $5 increase for the year. Is that right? Or then you have to add the other $3 for the, I'm trying to understand, when you say county general, is that everybody in the county?
Okay.
Or just people outside of
the
the
county
unincorporated?
general tax? There are three taxes that property taxes. The county general is assessed to everyone in the county. The conservation futures is assessed to everyone in the county. The county road tax is only assessed to those that are in unincorporated county.
So what would be the total increase then in the average property owner in whether or not they live in incorporated or unincorporated areas?
If you did
If you did the 1%.
If you did the 1%, those living in the county in its entire, everyone in the county would pay about $3 per year more. Those in the unincorporated area with a 1% in addition would have about another $11. So that would be about $14.
Oh, I thought that was with the road shift. Right.
Can I ask clarifying?
Go ahead, Commissioner. Burton.
So the $11
okay.
that you're referring to is road fund
Yes.
specifically? Okay.
Yes, so those living in the unincorporated area, in addition to that $3, would have an additional 11% if you did a 1%.
So the 1% for the general fund applies to everybody.
In the county.
And
That's
if we
correct.
did that, it would be $2 to $3 a
Correct,
year.
about $2.60 roughly.
And it would raise 638,000
Yes.
total. Okay.
Any other questions, comments? You want me to move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I was just going to say, is there any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Thank you.
All right, the next one that I have for you commissioners. Just this, and I don't think you have this one, Ron. This is where we are at in the general fund. From where we started to the last changes we have made, and this is just the summary.
There's just three different decisions, three different taxes. 51% general. 200.
The sheet I'm passing out, this reflects changes we made at the November 6th meeting. That change was to reduce the reduction in the sheriff travel by only down to 412,000, which takes them to 600 and I believe it's $20,000. So, or 610,000, excuse me. Otherwise, no other changes that have been in there. So this is what the numbers we would use going to December 4th, unless the commissioners have any other changes before then. We would then incorporate those changes if you have any others.
Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about I had been trying to get in touch with Tori Peterson, the juvenile court director. Are the positions that we have here for extra vacancy adjustment, are those detention, juvenile detention officer positions? I couldn't remember which ones. I know we've had several unfilled positions there.
They currently have 13 unfilled positions. This extra 300,000 is for 4 of the 5 correction officers. They have consistently run 4 correction officers short. They were at 5 recently. This makes the assumption we will run as the history has been. But like I said, they currently have 13 vacancies. And so even if maybe they're only short 3, they have enough vacancies right now I don't feel we would be at risk of them being short of budget.
Yeah, I do know that she's concerned about not having those positions filled for the safety of folks in the detention facility there, so. But you're saying there's so many vacant that even if some of them were to be filled, we would not be going over budget.
I don't believe she would go over budget for her situation because she has so many vacancies, yes.
Yeah, might be a good topic to discuss. How can we try and recruit more people into those positions? Because I know it's a stressful position, and I don't know if we have any, if we're doing any, what's the word, incentives, like we are for the jail detention officers or the sheriffs. I know we've tried to do some recruitment and some specialty looks at that. So anyway, just a comment that I hope we're not gonna just give up on those positions, and hopefully we can work in 2024 to find a way to get folks hired into those important positions for the juvenile detention center.
We have never wanted to give up on those positions, so we are continually working to recruit. I guess I don't know the answer. Director Sparber, I don't know if you know if the incentives are for the juvenile corrections officers as well. I thought it was, but okay. Yes, but Ashley, Commissioner French, can I have you hold yours, and I'm going to have Ashley give us clarify that answer for us. Okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're seeing in the chat that they are not part of the, which is my mistake. I thought that they were. So Okay. Thank you for that. Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing that I think, quite frankly, that will work for a positive for the county is I think we're going to see an increased number of lateral requests from the city of Spokane over the next several months and stuff. So before we get too aggressive with regard to other kinds of incentive packages and stuff, I'd like to be able to see what settles out with regard to the new alignment at the city and where some of those police officers will like to travel to. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're specifically talking about the corrections officers at the juvenile detention facilities. So I don't think there's a lateral, but there could be. You never know. Commissioner Jordan.
One of the big picture concerns I have is the number of vacancies that we have. Do we have a big picture number of, I know the vacancy adjustment is kind of a budgeting way to look at it, but I guess my question is, if we get a lot of resumes next year, and we're assuming a certain number of vacancies that we then turns out not to be correct, we have authorized positions, but we don't really have funding for them. So I guess the question is, what would we do if we get a lot of vacancies? What options do we have? I presume if we do take the 1%, we'd have a bit more. But what are the other options for that scenario?
The other options would be to use your existing fund balance if we had to. I was just going to look at the overall number though.
Where is that number?
Originally, so in your budget books on page 6, it talked about the funding, and we had 157.5 positions vacant. And that was as of July 1st. And we only took 72.5 of those as a vacancy adjustments. So we only did about half of the vacancies we had. So we would have to have a very good hiring season. And assuming that they are not all going to start on January 1st, I don't foresee that we will have an issue next year. But it could happen if we hired 100 people on January 1st, we may have an issue that we would have to deal with later. I don't think that is likely. If we have a very good hiring season, you're probably looking at July, mid-year, and you've built up vacancies for the first half anyway. So I don't see that as a super large risk right now, but it is a theoretical one.
Commissioner Waldron.
On that same line, so the 72.5, does that go up now though, that you added some more juvenile?
Yeah, it's to
So what's the
76.5 now.
76.5. And how many of those are public safety related positions? From juvenile court to sheriff's deputies, detention officers at the jail. Anyway, just wondering what percentage of that? Because I do.
A large percentage of that is public safety. I know that from the sheriff's office, it was 23. Detention services, we did 30 of their 40 vacancies. And then juvenile court, we did 6. So 30, that's about roughly 60 of those 70 would be from public safety.
Okay. Thank you.
And in the past, I will just ask for clarification. In the past, when we did fully fund those vacancies, then the departments were able to use those dollars to shift them to other needs that they had that did not require coming to us. So So I think this is a better way for us to help them with manage their budgets and have a little bit more oversight on that, doing it this way. Because since I've been here trying to get the departments to give us what their actual budgets are and what their actual needs are, instead of knowing that they would kind of be able to use this as a contingency, I'll say. So, so it's one of those things that we know that these are potential, positions they need. We'd like them to fill them. We certainly don't want them unfilled. But in some ways, it gives us an opportunity too to really work with the departments to say, what are your real needs? Let's fund what those real needs are, so we're all aware what those needs are, and not kind of use this as a contingency fund for them. And then I think too, it gives us the opportunity. We didn't have this issue kind of pre-COVID. So, I mean, COVID kind of has forced us into looking at things differently. But I think it's going to give us the opportunity to say, okay, with, now that we're out of COVID, what are the things that we can be doing differently and better? We've invested a lot in software. So what positions are positions that we don't need to be refilling? Again, with so many of them being public safety related, those are positions we do need versus other departments that maybe we've got some opportunity to make some changes in. But I think it's going to require, I think this next year, as we look at the 2025 budget, really taking the time to look at what those, vacancies are, what can we do? Can we fill them? Can we not? And then what are some of those opportunities that we can reduce a position that isn't filled, and then kind of looking at what our retirements are going to be too, because retirements are going to have, a major effect on all of these. So Commissioner Waldron.
Well, I agree, Madam Chair. I agree with your thought process on that. And I think that's a great idea for 2025 to look at if you took out the 59 public safety related positions, there's still about 16 that aren't funded in this budget, but there's also other positions that are unfilled. So there's a lot of opportunity to look at where we need to invest in terms of staff across the county. So when you answered Commissioner Jordan's question about, if we didn't take the 1% property tax, which is about $638,000, and we did need to make adjustments, you mentioned the fund balance. What do we have in the fund balance that you are comfortable that we'd be able to use to not draw that balance down too far in 2020?
I don't have that number directly in front of me, but we have about 15 to 20 million that is not designated for anything specific. That is the money that you would use for something like this. I mean, we've have fund balance that we keep because we want to keep our bond rating and things like that. This is the additional portion that we haven't dedicated to something else.
Commissioner Jordan.
So that 15 to 20 is not it doesn't affect our bond rate or our kind of goal for best practice for the bond rating.
We've met our goal for the best practice, which is 2 months of expenses. That is more of I would call it a rainy day type fund where if we have to, we have that available. Doesn't mean go out and spend it because that's all you have, but that would be more of your rainy day type money.
Can you provide me with a kind of little historical context of how that's changed over the past 5 years or so? It'd be interesting to see. Is it
I can
lower than it has been? Is it higher?
I would say the board in the past, since Mary's been on it and probably before, has been very aware that we needed to have it increase because it was very low,
Okay.
even as early as 2016, 17, when I know Mary joined the others on the board because we had just come through the 2008 through 2014 period, which was a very trying time economically. And so I'll just let Al speak.
Yeah, Commissioner French, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So as a result of the 2009, 2010 recession and real estate market collapse, the county, as well as other jurisdictions across this country, incurred a financial crisis, if you will. And we spent from the minute I joined, the credit rating for the county was a priority. And we were at a point to where, quite frankly, we went for 5 years without being able to give a COLA to our employees because we just didn't have the revenue to be able to do that. So we have gone through a number of processes to get rid of stupid stuff you do for no apparent reason. And, whether you want to call it lean management or whatever you want to call it, we've gone through and really streamlined a lot of the departments within the county, which has allowed us to be able to right size not only the organization with regard to how big the organization can be relative to the revenues available to it, but then we engaged in a very strategic plan to try and improve our credit rating. We were when I joined the county, I think at AA. We are now AA plus. We are one of only 2 counties in the state that are AA plus. And so when I met with the underwriters to be able to secure that bond rating, one of the things they spoke about was the fact that we've got a contingency fund that provides a great deal of protection for our ratepayers, for our taxpayers, without having to go back to require a large tax increase to be able to balance the budget. And so we've been very diligent about how do we maintain both our credit rating so that when we do financing, and we are the fiscal agent for a number of organizations, including the Public Facilities District, that we're securing the best interest rate available out there for a community and county of our size and stuff. So the AA rating is AA plus rating is a cherished status that we work very hard to secure. And we maintain that because we're very fiscally conservative, and having that reserve account there in cases of bad times. And, this very well could be that bad time that we've been anticipating with a soft landing, or if not a soft landing, clearly a softening of revenues that will get us through 2024 until the economy can start to recover again. So this has been literally when I came in the front door of the county, this has been a priority for the last 12 years and stuff. So, kudos to my fellow commissioners, Kearns and Cooney, because, they've carried the ball as well as me to get us where we're at. And so we're very protective of that. You don't want to lose that credit rating because it will cost you an interest cost for financing and stuff. So that's a little bit of background. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also state that, just like this year with the fire situation where we did decide to use $1 million out of our fund balance, was a purposeful use of that unanticipated, and so ensuring that we have that for the future for any of those kind of extraordinary items that we may not know what we can't predict. So that's why it's important to have that and keep that available. So it is, let me look at my timing here because we have a special meeting at 10:30. So it is 10:27. So if there's
I have one other sheet just to give you an update on. I will just pass it out, and that's on the rental car tax.
okay. And once you do that, then we're going to just continue this meeting till after the 10:30.
Okay.
So when the 10:30 is over, we will then be coming back. And, Mr. Anderson, you can make sure I'm doing it right.
I can just hand that out at that time then.
So at this time, yes, I'll have you hand that out and then we can ask any questions when we come back. So we do have a 10:30 special meeting that we will have here soon. So I will just continue. It's 10:28. We will continue this meeting until after our 10:30 special meeting. And so at this point, we will continue this meeting until I can't tell you the time, but as soon as that 10:30 meeting is over, we will be right back to this meeting. So don't go away. Thank you. It's recording. Okay. Okay. Welcome everyone to our special meeting. It is November 20th, 2023. This is a special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners today to discuss the Spokane County Planning Commission findings of facts and recommendations. So, Mr. Chesney.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to clarify our past meetings. Today's meeting is to do two things, is to accept the Planning Commission's recommendations and make two referrals, one for November 28th for the Capital Facilities Plan, one for December 12th for the remaining pieces. Ron, next slide, please. We're going to just go through some things quickly as a reminder. This is kind of the summary of the CFP amendment, which is we hope the final element of updating the capital facilities document and Chapter 7 to cure the rest of the deficiencies that have been there from the settlement agreement, and also to bring this up to currency with regular GMA policy. Now, with the help of all of the departments that have capital projects, they've been incorporated in this. And so this one, as you may have seen in the comments, was endorsed by FutureWise, endorsed by the Neighborhood Alliance, and they were recommending approval by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did so and is sending it to you. Next slide, please. These are the comp plan amendments that were before us this year. Next slide. And you can see the summary is, as it was before, from 38 acres down to acre and a half. Most of them increased densities in residential and a couple from light industrial. Next slide, please. There were a few comments made since the Planning Commission has acted, and we wanted to bring these to your attention related to CPA 0416, which is the remanded one. There was a comment about grades and concerns about roads. There's been a number of comments about road access on this one. And you may recall your predecessors prohibited access onto 5 Mile Road except for emergencies. That prohibition carried forward into this action, and so that didn't change. There were concerns simply about the physical geometry of the road, and our Public Works and Roads folks have found it is sufficient and can be built within county road standards. And then two other issues that are bring some new information to light from the county or from the Planning Commission. That's regarding CPAs 12 and 17. 12, as you may saw from the last slide, is the one on Mill Road on the north side. There was quite a number of neighborhood concerns about that change, and they were concerned that they did not have sufficient time to bring their concerns to the Planning Commission. Accordingly, we are recommending that you continue this one on to the future to allow for additional gathering of comments. And then 17, which was the more complicated of those, it was the 5 Mile Prairie swap, generally intended to help bring us back into compliance with GMA. The city ultimately wrote a letter supporting that, given the circumstances, with the request that we help cooperate during the 2026 project to help restore urban growth areas around the southwestern part of the city. Nonetheless, FutureWise remained concerned about this, and so we are recommending again a continuance, not a change. The Planning Commission voted to approve both of these, and we're simply asking you to continue those for further work. Next slide, please. And this is a summary of those actions. You can see the CFP is being recommended for adoption, and this one we want to continue. We want to have stay on the schedule to be adopted next week, November 28th. The rest of these then would go to December 12th, and you can see the recommendation is there are no changes to the Planning Commission's recommendations, simply CPA 12, a CPA 17 being continued into the coming year. None of those actions require a separate public hearing. So if happy to take questions, and we can try to address any other concerns you may have.
Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to remind me of, I think what we talked about last week, if the board chooses to continue any of these amendments, that doesn't require a public hearing. Those don't have to be set to hearing.
That's correct.
Okay. So do we have to make those decisions today, or do we just push them towards a public meeting?
So if Ron could advance one slide further. So if the board were to go with the recommendations of staff, then the second motion would just be to move to set all of them for public meeting. If the board thought that they wanted to take an action that was the opposite, so final action to adopt or deny, that was the opposite of the PC, you would need to set that for a public hearing. So those are the proposed motions would be split into two. The first motion is on receiving and setting the CFP in Chapter 7. The second motion up there is for setting all of the CPAs for a public meeting. And then if there was a motion to modify to take one of those separately and set it for a hearing, you would move to modify that.
Commissioner Waldron, if the board agrees with the recommendation to continue, that verbiage will be in the resolution that you would be teeing up for the meetings on the 12th.
It's just difficult to track the different numbers and know which ones we're talking about. But the way you have this motion set up, is it includes all the ones that you are recommending be continued?
Correct. So if you went with the staff recommendation, this contemplates all that. The first one that sets them all for a meeting. And then the resolution on the 12th would be written the way that the staff recommendation is. So to continue the 17 and the 12, 0222, and then affirm 416 and adopt the rest. Not sure if you guys have a printout of those recommendations so you can see them at the same time.
Yeah, this right here.
Yeah. I just had Brenda printed it for me. I wanted to print out, so. I have my own printout.
I did bring printouts if anyone would prefer a hard copy.
So there's three. Yeah, okay.
And I do want to clarify for the record that all 5 commissioners are present. I apologize that I didn't do that at the start of this special meeting. Give the attendance of all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner French is on Zoom and our executive management team is here. For the record. One clarifying question for me is that on the CFP Chapter 7, we're wanting that for November 28th because that needs to be approved. I think just to clarify for people, that has to be approved prior to our budget approval on the 4th of December. So that's why that has been moved up and is going up to the 28th.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, sure. Oh, just a second, Commissioner French. Go ahead, Commissioner French. We can't hear you.
I said I would go ahead and yield to Commissioner Kearns.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to set consideration of amendments to Chapter 7 and the capital facilities element of the comprehensive plan on November 28th, 2023 at 2 p.m. or as soon as possible thereafter at an open public meeting.
Second.
Second.
Oh, Commissioner Waldorf beat you, Commissioner French, sorry.
Gotta be on your toes now. Come on.
So I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none or seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Waldorf.
So Madam Chair, I would like to take 3 of the different comp plan amendments and set them to hearing. So what's the best way to do that?
It's probably easiest for the first motion to set them all for a meeting and then move to modify so that you can vote on the motion to modify. And if that fails, then you're back to the meeting.
Okay.
Would be my thought.
Okay, thank you.
In that case, Madam Chair, I move that we set consideration of comprehensive plan amendment file numbers 16-04, 02-22, 05-23, 06-23, 07-23, 08-23, 11-23, 12-23, 15-23, 17-23 for a public meeting on December 12th.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Waldorf.
Madam Chair, I move to modify the prior motion to set 3 of these comp plan amendments for a public hearing. CPA 416, 723, and 823.
Second.
That was
3.
16.
723 and 823.
Okay, just a second, just writing this down. Okay, I have a motion to amend and a second to amend the previous motion to set for a public hearing CPA 0416, 0723, and 0823. Further discussion.
So Madam Chair, as previously discussed by our planning department, the comp plan amendment known as the North Metro 416 has a lot of history and complications. And so it's a challenging one. And I think I would appreciate having a hearing on it in order to be able to make a a decision on that one, because I think there's two ways we could go, and I would like the opportunity to have that opportunity to study that a little bit further and make that decision. And then in terms of 723 and 823, those are two areas on the West Plains where there was received by the Plan Commission some concerns from the Cheney School District about increased population and whether or not the capacity for those is currently available. And so I think there were some other concerns raised. So those are just ones that I think should go to hearing so we can have a little bit more discussion on them and make a final decision. Thank you.
Commissioner Jordan and then Commissioner French.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I just know that in particular 416 has a lot of history. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it all, processing it all. 7 and 8 this year had some more complex public comments, and I just like to have a chance to fully review those before we make a decision, hence the support of the motion. Thank you.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to speak against the motion, and I'll be specific to each one of the requests. 0416, the challenges that issue has had in the past has not been necessarily with the applicant as much as it's been with the county not having elements of our comp plan or zoning ordinances to a level to where the hearings board agreed with them and stuff. So we've improved that, and we've now at a point to where we've satisfied all those requirements and we're ready to move forward. And it just seems to me that to restrict the opportunity to provide more housing in this area because one piece of property has been challenged, not by the property as much. It does have some physical constraints, but by the county's own zoning ordinances seems to be punitive to the property owner and counterproductive to our goal of providing more housing into this market. It just strikes me as being awkward that you have folks that talk about, yes, I'm going to lead the effort to provide more housing and then vote no. So that just seems to be terribly inconsistent. And then with regard to 0723 and 823, again, in an area that has the greatest, fastest growing job growth in the county and is in desperate need of more housing so that we can meet not only the needs for our employees and our citizens, but also so that we can reduce the amount of traffic congestion, especially on I-90 going down Sunset Hill, because there's inadequate housing on the West Plains, just seems to be counterproductive to not only good growth planning with regard to housing, but also demands that we make on our transportation infrastructure. So I just think that if I can appreciate if the new commissioners want to learn more, but not at the expense of the community while we're trying to provide more housing and improve our transportation system and a variety of other things. These are ripe for moving forward. The Planning Commission moved them forward. And so I'm going to vote against the motion.
Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add that with regard to 0416, there is some legal issues that the county is having to deal with that particular one. And yes, has nothing to do with the current developer, but I think it's important whenever we're trying to get in compliance with the Growth Management Act that we just have the opportunity to have a hearing on that and make a decision. And again, I'm just asking for hearings. It doesn't mean that I will necessarily vote yay or no, but I think I'd like the opportunity to have that chance. So thank you.
So in regards to the amended motion, I took the time this last week to have discussions with our planning department and our attorney. And so I'm comfortable in I will not be supporting the amendment. This has been the process that we've used at the county since I've been here. And I'm, having the planning commission do their job and they do the public hearings at their level. And then further talking to our staff as to, the questions that I had and got answered, that I'm comfortable moving these forward. So I will not be supporting the motion. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I have a motion and a second to amend the previous motion that we would set a public hearing for CPA 0416, 0723, and 0823. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay, motion does not carry. The amended motion does not carry. So we still have an original motion to accept, let's see, you've got it in front of you. The original motion is to move that we set consideration of comprehensive plan amendment file numbers 1604, 0222, 0523, 0623, 0723, 0823, 1123, 1223, 1523, and 1723 for a public meeting on December 12th.
And Madam Chair, one point of clarification, just for the record, the first one should be 0416 as opposed to 1604.
Thank you.
That's.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. So 0416. Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner Waldron, or sorry, Commissioner Jordan. I'm looking at Commissioner Waldron. And
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be voting no on the motion, even though I do support setting the majority of these for hearing. Just for the record, I do support setting 1223, 1723, 1523, 0222, 0523, 1123, and 623 for meeting. I would just like to have the opportunity to even have a public hearing on the other three. And because the motion does not include that, I'll vote no on the package, even though I do support those moving forward.
any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed signify by nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2. Okay, is
Thank you,
that,
Commissioners.
is that all we have for our special meeting?
That's correct.
Okay. There we go. It is now 10:50 and we will conclude our special meeting. And we may just take like a 5-minute break and then we will start back at 10:55 for our continuation of our 9:30 meeting. Thank you all very much. And Commissioner French, I want to clarify that we have use of your stamp for the next foreseeable future.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you for asking, but you do have my permission.
Okay, and I'm going to assume that you and your assistant will make sure that if you want to sign something hand signature, that you have that opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our meeting and we'll reconvene at 10:50 for our continuation of our 9:30 briefing meeting. Paperwork stuff. Good. Okay, welcome back. We are now continuing our 9:30 strategic planning meeting. Let the record, it is 10:57, and let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner French is on Zoom. And Randy Bischoff had just handed out an item. Is there any other questions, or do you want to discuss the?
I was just going to make a comment on it. On November 6th, we had a presentation from the Spokane Sports Commission where they had requested some one-time monies for the Flora Park. And also they had requested increased annual givings to them. I wanted to come back to give you some updated numbers. So I've given you updated numbers for 23, where what the beginning fund balance was in 23, where I expect the ending fund balance to be for 23, and then have rolled that forward into 24. In 24, I did put an amount in there for the Spokane Sports Commission, but their agreement is done as of 12/31 of this year. So that is just a placeholder. The commissioners have to decide what they want that amount to be for 24. It would be a new contract because their contract's done. And that's really all I needed to say about this sheet.
So I'm going to clarify. So their contract's done at the end of 2023.
That is correct.
Okay, so we have to renegotiate for 2024 what that
Yes,
amount
that is correct.
Okay. And I would say, and if I'm not remembering the meeting correctly, some of my questions I have on the Sports Commission, why I would like to leave it where it's at this point in time, is because I don't understand. I mean, I think they need to give us an understanding of what their entire budget is and what they do with that entire budget. And just saying you want an additional couple $100,000 isn't enough for me to approve that, when we know that there's other opportunities for these funds as well within the county. And so glad to know that the contract is open, and we need to relook at that, because I think those are some of the questions that I would have as we look at that contract. Happy to continue doing what we're doing and maybe look at, an increase with cost of living and all of that and what they're doing. But they're part of what they were talking about was part of the public facility district as well, because the podium is actually part of the public facilities district. And so I don't know what the public facilities district is doing to continue to seek events for that event space versus what the Sports Commission is doing. And so I have a lot of questions just on how it really works that I would need answered before agreeing to additional funding. Knowing we have additional funding, I mean, we can make those changes as we look to what that new contract is in the future. Then that's my thoughts. Commissioner Kearns?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with everything Commissioner CUNY stated. From what I understand, and I mean, this would probably be a question for the Sports Commission. I understand they came to us, they had an ask for us, but from what I understand, they were also going to the Valley and they had an ask for the Valley. So I'd like to kind of know what are all of the different asks they have out there? Or is everybody getting asked for the same amount and they're, kind of everything shut out and hoping one says yes? Or do they have a strategic ask for each of the kind of regional partners? It's just, there's a lot of unknowns at this point.
Commissioner French and then Commissioner Jordan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to weigh in and say I agree with you, Madam Chair. There's more questions for me than answers, and I'd like to be able to get more information before we've made a determination with regard to funding for next year. Thank you.
Commissioner Jordan.
I concur.
Commissioner Waldron.
Yes, I do see that they did send us, I think, Mr. Simmons they sent us their 2023 budget and their proposed 2024, but it doesn't, I think, we want to know more information about how all the different revenue sources are coming into Spokane Sports, why they would need to increase for their operating budget. I do think that the cross-country course and their proposal around building this cross-country course out in the Valley is a great idea. I think that sounds like they're putting together a real strategy to pull funds from various jurisdictions in the state and the valley, significantly from the valley from their tax. So, which tax would that be? Their tourism tax, I think. So I do know that they had a time frame on wanting to apply to have the national NCAA cross-country championships, I think, and be able to apply for that. So I would like to be able to at least respond back to them about the ask for capital to build out that course. But I don't know again what the exact timeline is, and they probably need to get back to us with an official request letter and timeline for that. But I don't know if we've received that, but I am interested, and I think Commissioner Kearns, I think you mentioned that was a very interesting project, but I think we need an actual ask and an actual like timeline of when we would need to get back to them on that.
I support their cross-country track that they wanted. I think that's separate. That's a one-time capital expense, but yeah, the ongoing increase for their sort of direct allocation from us for operations, I think that's where all the questions are for me.
Yeah, and do you have the numbers of how much that ask was for the cross-country course?
It was 335-ish, I believe.
And that was to come out of these funds as well?
That was what they were proposing, yes.
Which I think at the time was basically taking us
Down to $50,000.
to a very low fund balance, which wouldn't necessarily be prudent.
That means it wasn't it was more of the remainder number, not this is what I need number.
So I agree on that, I mean, I think it's a great project. I'd love to help support it and figure out how to support it, but I think that one too has a little more information that we need to get, as just stated. So even though we're not budgeting out of this, we know we have funds available that we can then reallocate those funds as we go into the next year. But I think it is true, Commissioner Walter said that, there could be timing issues. And so I'm happy to look at what those timing issues are and how we could help meet those timing issues to get our questions answered ahead of that. Thank you.
That is all I had.
Okay, Mr. Simmons, did you have any other comments?
We're just going to quickly cover what they had emailed over. It looks like the cross-country course, they're estimating $7 million to build it. They have a request into the city of the Spokane Valley for 4.4 million out of the LTAC. They have a request into the state out of their 2024 capital budget for 600,000. So they have a $2 million delta that they haven't identified other funds for yet.
Okay, thank you. And I think then too, part of the question is, what are the other opportunities that we could be, these funds might be used for within the county as well? Not sure, if this could be used to help with some of the unfunded items out at the West Plains Park that we just got a, briefing on, because that's for youth sports, having two of those fields and, what that might be. So I think those are things that we've got to really look at. Just, I think in the past we've been able to dedicate these funds more specifically to these areas, but I think we've got to look at two across the entire county. What are the opportunities? Mr. Simmons.
Yeah, that in addition to the, we'll have a maintenance obligation out at the new park. Yeah, so that's another, the commissioners have used that in the past, these funds, to help with maintenance and operations. And there's a hotel motel tax that the commissioners can also look at for some of those opportunities that you just mentioned as well, Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know we're running short on budget time this year, but like I said, it doesn't mean that we can't look at that and reallocate for the future. Okay, Thank you, Mr. Bischoff. Appreciate all the time and attention you've given us on all this important information. So then that takes us to, are there any other budget questions that anyone has for Randy at this time?
Okay.
Commissioner Waldron?
Well, I had some different budget proposals I was going to bring forward, so I was hoping Mr. Bishop would stick around in case dollars and cents.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, I just wanted to, a couple of things that I've mentioned or have been looking at and over the last couple months as kind of strategic budget ideas for 2024. I just wanted to bring those forward. One thing that had been mentioned, so I've been doing research to bring forward to the full board just what it would cost to do some of these things. One thing we had come up that I think would be a really good use of our funds is to reinstate the SCRAPS Community Relations and Development Officer. And that position was in place for many years. And as I understand it, was responsible for building community relationships, raising funds from private entities, getting donations to SCRAPS. And I guess during the pandemic, that position maybe was either unfilled or not funded. And I don't know the history on that, but it seems like a really important position knowing that SCRAPS now is, when we've gotten briefings here during our budget season, the county's putting way more money into SCRAPS than it used to, because we used to receive a lot of private foundation and community support. So that position would, for half a year, be approximately $30,000 is what I was told, although it seems low, but the other, I just put that in there that maybe we could set a goal for mid-year, trying to hire for that position. I know that they're still trying to hire other positions and the new director's kind of getting other positions filled right now, but that to me seems really critical for just kind of rebuilding SCRAPS as we come out of the pandemic. And there's a lot of challenges with a lot of animals right now all across the country, too many animals, and trying to manage and get those animals out and adopted in the community. So the other couple items that are public safety related are the rideshare program. So one of the things that I heard from almost every court or public safety office in my first year as a commissioner was, we love the rideshare program, which is a funding those who are out in the community pre-trial to get to their mental health appointments, substance treatment appointments. So those who are in different therapeutic courts like mental health or DUI court, they have to go do certain number of hours. They have to show up. They have to show up for hearings. And this provides basically Lyft or Uber rides through a contract with Pioneer Services. And I just heard across the board that it was really, really successful in getting people, especially in, I think it was district court, especially very successful in getting people to their appointments and reducing failures to appear. And so we did find some more MacArthur money this year. I guess the MacArthur Foundation allowed for some more funding to continue that program. I think from what Mr. Sparber told me, it runs out in February. And so if we were able to find $150,000, we could fund it just for the county, district, and superior courts. And it would probably be higher if we wanted to include municipal court as well, $213,000. So I just wanted to put that on the table for something for the discussion of the board, because when that program got cut this year, there were a lot of folks from across the system. I happened to meet with a couple of the offices. I'm thinking of the when folks are not in parole, but the probation officers especially appreciated having the rides to get folks to where they needed to go. And when it got cut mid-year this year for a couple months, folks really noticed that it made an impact. So I just was hoping we could continue the program and not have a break like we did this year. So I don't know if there's any MacArthur funds that would be available to continue it through 2024, but I wanted to give the dollar amount out for the board just to consider whether or not we could have funded that through the general fund. And then the last thing was we got a really great presentation last month from our pretrial services department, and they mentioned how successful their supervised release program is. And that's folks who are released pre-trial, but the judge requires them to be checking in with a pretrial services officer or, a staff member. And those folks have shown to be much more likely to show up for their hearings, stay on track, not reoffend. And so we used to have, I guess, 3 or 4 other of those positions funded with the MacArthur grant. So just to fund one of those would be about $76,000. So I did the research on that. And I think we've already mentioned the pre-employment preparation program. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I support funding that program to increase apprenticeships, just like we fund the AGC program. And then the other thing I've brought up several times in the conversations about the federal lobbyist and all the federal grants that may be out there in the next two years related to the Infrastructure Act, related to some of these big federal programs that could help us upgrade our facilities here at the county or invest in different programs. We have, I guess, a temporary position in the grants office that's an assistant helping with the ARPA funds. I am concerned about the capacity of just 2 FTE to manage all the grants and contracts, especially if we are successful in landing some new opportunities at the federal level in the next year. Will we have the capacity to apply for or manage new grants? And so I talked to Heather and she said, well, her number one priority would be just to keep that assistant position, make that into a permanent position. And so I just wanted to highlight that we're using general funds money to pay for that position. We potentially could use ARPA, but there's some different options. But I just want to highlight that the capacity of that office in the future is a concern. And so those are some numbers I wanted to bring forward just for consideration as we're making our final decisions on the budget in the next 3 weeks.
Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also put 4 suggestions before the board. I get hoping to just take a moment to also give a little outline of those for discussion purposes. And I focus more on some of my ideas to suggest around special funds rather than the general fund. And first one I just wanted to raise and suggest is setting aside some upfront costs for some of the ideas we've discussed around having a welcoming campus or language access. This could include some of the display screens we talked about, translated signage at customer service points, any language line needs across departments, any additional phones that are needed, and any training. In speaking with Mr. McMorris, sorry to throw you under the bus, Mr. McMorris, it sounds like there are some funds under ARPA that could be set aside for this purpose. And $100,000 would be maybe on the high end if the board wanted to look at some of the kind of outdoor signage options. Those tend to be a little bit more expensive. If we wanted to just stick with, screens, outdoor screens, because they got to be weather resistant and all that stuff. So if we wanted to go in that direction, $100,000 from ARPA would be a reasonable number. I think if there was less interest in the exterior screens, more like 60,000 might be reasonable, but that funding is available under ARPA today. I know we have a committee that is going to be meeting to talk about some of these things. And so my suggestion would be we have an opportunity to set aside an amount up to, and then we could come back as the board and really fine tune that program and any steps we want to take. So that was number one. The other two under special funds, I really got to thinking about after Measure 1 did not pass and kind of wondering what can we still do with the funds that we have that relate to public safety. So I was remembering that at a previous meeting, I think back in early October, we had a general discussion about the mental health sales tax. And the idea was brought up that Justin in community services would be coming forward with some kind of co-responder proposal. And so recently I reached out to Justin and I said, what's the update on that? What is that idea that you're working on? And it hadn't really gone through all of the chain of approvals in his world. But I said, just tell me about the idea. And so what he explained is that his idea is to basically create or explore a partnership with the City of Spokane Fire Department, where the mental health sales tax funds could be used for 3 EMTs. Then Justin would take Medicaid funds, which he has he works with on a regular basis, leverage those state dollars to provide clinicians. So this would be basically a co-deployed team of fire and mental health. It would be geared at diverting people who are in crisis from the hospital, which I think is part of the Medicaid interest in that, and also divert them from further decompensating and ending up needing a law enforcement response. So the cost on that was the cost of 3 EMTs that Justin identified. So my idea, or his idea, is really to set aside an amount, again, up to what that would be. And then I would like to just see us as the commission really turn Justin loose to go to the City of Spokane, negotiate the details of that, and then report back to us on what he comes up with in negotiations. And then that funding, of course, would be contingent on the board's approval of that program and the contract. So that was number 2. The last one under special funds for consideration was one of the highlights of my time as a new commissioner has been going around to visit our courts, but in particular, the therapeutic courts. I know that I think everybody on the board's been to visit Veterans Court, and also mental health court and DUI are parts of those in the district court. So I was speaking with district court and I said, what would it take to grow your programs of the number of defendants that could come into district court? And the answer that I received was that we receive a lot more referrals than we can accept. There's basically a bottleneck, and that was identified to me as probation officers, because those are the folks that kind of oversee and hold people accountable who are in those programs. And so district court reported to me that they could grow those therapeutic courts substantially with additional probation officers and or case manager, because the case manager is really the one who does the services connection. So I did suggest 2 probation officers to grow the capacity of those programs, as I think they help hold offenders and defendants accountable while getting them help, treatment, support, so that they're less likely to reoffend. And then the last idea I just wanted to suggest for the board relates to a topic that we've spoke about generally in our budget discussions, and that was the Monsanto settlement funding. And upon looking at the settlement documents for that, just very briefly, my understanding is that the county was not a party to that lawsuit, which related to PCBs. We were basically a beneficiary of being in the class as a class action case. And while therefore the class action funds are not required legally to be spent on any particular purpose, the settlement documents, I think, contemplate that it's the intent of those dollars to go towards several purposes. One was restitution. So that's a form of punishment for the bad actor, as I understand it. And then remediation was the other piece. So my suggestion is let's look at taking a portion of those funds for water quality projects, environmental related projects. Doris Morrison Learning Center is one that we know relates to water quality and the environment, and I don't know all the details, but from what I gather, we're still figuring out the operational financing model for that program. And there's an opportunity to have some startup funds potentially, or to ask Kyle and Rob Lindsay for other stormwater projects, other ways we could devote a portion of those funds to that topic. And then if there's interest in that discussion, I have some ideas for how that could impact our capital list as well. But those are my suggestions. Appreciate you hearing me out.
Thank you. So I appreciate you guys bringing these forward, and I know, your first budget season with us. And we may have to look at what, and this is just me as one commissioner speaking, since we've got to approve the budget in 2 weeks, as like what the timing would be as we bring these items forward. Because with 2 weeks left, it's hard. I mean, there's some of these I would definitely need a presentation on to make some decisions on, to see what the data and the statistics are. Some of them, coming out of the mental health, reserve, is again, something just like on the retail tax that we can look at towards the future as to, funding some of those reserves. I think, so those are just some of my comments, seeing some of these. But I think, I see Mr. Sparber's here, and I asked him to come down because on some of those, we go back to Commissioner Waldrop's just on the MacArthur funding for the rideshare program. I mean, for me, we need to get an update on what the data is supporting the rideshare program is, when MacArthur's grant is going to expire. Are they looking at renewing? Those are all questions that I don't know. So that's just one example, that, and I know Justin has mentioned to me on the, Commissioner Jordan, on yours, on the co-responders with the fire department. But I don't think we've gotten like a full briefing as to what he anticipates that looking like. And so, I mean, I think that's something we'd have to want the whole board to be briefed on, as we look at making that decision. So, so those are just a couple of comments that I have. And Mr. Sparber, before I go to you, I'll go to Commissioner French.
Okay.
Just wait. Let's
Okay.
hear from Commissioner French first.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I would want to also, I support your comments and agree with you. I would also be challenged with, I do not believe that we have directed mental health sales tax to a single jurisdiction, because it's a regional tax and we've really focused on regional programs. And so that would be one thing that I would want to know more about before we start talking about spending some of that money for one jurisdiction, or the benefit of a single jurisdiction as opposed to the region. And with regard to the other request, certainly we'll give that consideration. As I go down the list, I'm just pretty impressed at how many of those requests would have been funded by Measure 1, which I think the proponents actually oppose. So it's kind of challenging to now come back and say, well, we want this money, but we don't want to fund the source for it. So anyway, but we'll give it due consideration before we adopt the next budget. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
If I could ask, Mike, if you're going to talk about the ride share, could you also talk about the supervised release and how many folks have utilized that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't have that data in front of me, Commissioner Kearns, but I could
Ballpark.
just, I could talk about it in general. Commissioner Waldrop is correct. The grant ends at the end of December. And we have about 63,000 in MacArthur money that we could ask for that could fund it through February. The program itself cost about 20,000 per month to operate. And if you go ahead and put that, it is well liked by the courts, and you can see some of the percentages if Ron brings it up here real quick. Okay, can you go up a little bit? There you go. So if you look at, that's gonna be rough. So we're presently in the third quarter, which is if you go down to the red portion down there. For 2023, right there. So those are the numbers that we're talking about. And the users for it, it's predominantly municipal court, district court, or about even on their use for it, 30% for district court and about 37% for municipal court. Superior Court was up to 22%. However, we discovered that some of those rides were being given to DOC inmates. And so we cut that off and said, you're going to have to ask DOC to provide those rides for them. So that money would roll back in there. And there's some other uses like pretrial services. The challenge with the rideshare program is that there's an assumption made that if we give you a ride, it resulted in a non-failure to appear or failure to comply. It gives no rationale to the thought that the person could have arrived there on their own. And so it's challenging for me to say, okay, if we provide them rides, it's the only way that we're going to be recutting. It could reduce some, but it's not an absolute correlation between the two of them. The program was never set up to go that way. So I would like to continue to maybe ask MacArthur for the remaining funds, the 60,000 operated out to February, see if the numbers hold true to what they are. Rather than diving into a full, that would be my recommendation, just based on what I know. And then I'd really like to know or have an opportunity to maybe talk with Diane, who is our statistician, to see if there's a way through district court at least, because we have access to district court records, to see if there's any correlation between failure to appears and failure to complies over those 3 months to the phone call. And so that's what I would recommend from my side of it to the board. Secondly, on the pretrial services, I was a little taken back by the request for this because I had asked Aaron if they had put one in their budget, and the information I got back was they were fully staffed this year and their workload was pretty steady. So we didn't add one, maybe something to look at next year. So if we're going to journey out on something different, like we're going to try some felony diversion or one of those things, I would want to model something behind it before we jump into just having another person do it. I'm not against it. I'm always for having another person in pretrial services. I just don't have enough of the details and an idea of how it would be used or how Mr. Stromberger would like to use it. So those are kind of the two things on a high level. Supported release is not going as well as we'd hoped to. There's been several referrals to it without having the data in front of me, but only 2 or 3 have participated. The challenge with that program as it's set up is that it's voluntary. So a lot of people could be referred to it, but they have to be on their own, come back to take part of the services, take part of the assessment to identify some of those challenges that you would otherwise, result in a failure to appear or one of those type of things. So the challenge too, along with it, is that as long as they don't, they cannot take part in the program, but they show up for their court date, there's no penalty assessed. And so if they don't want to take part in the programming and they're still making a court appointment, it's a no harm, no foul in the eyes of district court. So
and I believe, just for clarification, Commissioner Waldron, you stated that the judges require, and it's voluntary. The judges can't require pretrial for them to
No,
participate.
I'm referring to the monitored release
Yeah.
that judges put on as a court.
You're talking about EHM.
I'm talking about felony pretrial monitored release.
Right. And that would have to be ordered by Superior Court
Right.
through pretrial services.
Sorry if I
Yeah,
was unclear on that. No, I wasn't talking about
I'm
this.
clear on what you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying, I don't know what would be, what felonies we're identifying, what we're looking as far as who's going out, or if it's just an addition to his staff to do this, to do what we're doing right now. I have to lean to him to kind of give me an understanding of what he'd want to do with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, when he presented this PowerPoint, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yeah. Cool.
When he presented the PowerPoint, I think we were all pretty impressed with, so the the PowerPoint had like a 97% safety rate,
Mhm.
the absence of a new criminal arrest while on monitored release. So I'm talking about the monitored release, not the, it's very confusing, not the
Supportive.
supportive release. And then the appearance rate was at 84%, 2023 to date for those defendants on monitored release who appear for
Mhm.
all their court dates.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a really, and he said right now when I saw this PowerPoint slide, I was like, wow, this program is really working. And we used to have more folks. Now, I don't know how many people are being referred into the program, but their caseloads are a little high, but it may be something to consider again in the next year. But obviously it's a successful program and I just don't want it to be limited if we're just limiting the number of these staff that do the monitored release.
Yeah, and that's correct. They're doing a fantastic job and their numbers are way up there as far as what they're accomplishing. But I would want to know kind of how it would be used and what they would be using it for.
Yes.
And will it make an immediate difference by adding one, so I'd have to take a look at those things.
Commissioner Jordan.
Mike, is the MacArthur funds that are available to apply for, are those like, the premise of that is transitioning to permanent support? Is that correct, or am I
So,
off?
so MacArthur has a capstone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is that the funds you're referring to?
No,
Okay,
these are existing funds that we have right now that could be allocated for those.
okay.
So there's a portion of it that's already been allocated to run supported release out through 2024. And those funds have already been earmarked for that. And there was also funds remaining for the ride share that we could use, 60,000, like I said, about 20,000 per year. So between Diane and Aaron and I, we're guessing it would probably be 3 months or maybe just a little bit more than that would last for that part of it. You can apply for a capstone grant through the MacArthur Foundation. The challenge is what I was talking about. There's really no direct correlation between the rideshare program and actually producing a reduction in failure to appear or failure to comply. So that would be a challenge. It wasn't set up that way originally to monitor those things. And I think anything that I would want to see go forward would have that element embedded in it. So we're tracking data to make sure that there's absolutely a correlation between what we're doing and the other end of it. And then I intended to ask MacArthur this month to use that remaining $60,000 for the budget to spend up the money for the rideshare program through February. And that's what I have right now. So.
I just wanted to add a little bit more on
Okay.
the different topic on the fire idea. I certainly would support having Justin for a presentation at any time. Just to give my understanding of kind of the concept he had in mind is that I think the city of Spokane has the highest call volume of these types of calls. So it would be kind of targeting the greatest need. But the thought, I think, is to pilot this concept because there's probably just not enough funds to go around, kind of like we're piloting the student wellness initiative at particular schools. But personally, I would be open to what the scope of that is. I think it'd be a shame to leave out the city in any program like this, given the significance of the population there. But I would be open to talk about scope and see what Justin's recommendation is. I think maybe as part of the budget process, the opportunity is to say, we'll set aside some money and then we'll turn the staff loose to craft the more specific program.
I was just going to say, as I look down the list, I'm, again, that's part of figuring out how to do this in the future that, things are getting hashed out prior to the budget needing to be approved. And as I look down both the lists, any of those can be changed as we go into next year. None of those are set that it has to be part of the budget this year. If we can look at finding, we've got some contingency funds in our budget already. But I think it's got to be we need to vet these out with the whole board. And today's not going to be enough time in my mind to vet out some of these projects, and especially on the mental health sales tax, those are available for us to make changes to in the future. The one, and I don't want to really be the one stating this, is the one that can't be undone if we pass our budget is the clean water settlement funds, because those are one-time funds that are already being appropriated to capital projects. That if we wanted to look at changing some of that, and everyone knows I'm passionate about the Doris Morrison Learning Center, that I'm not sure that, we would need more information to figure that out, but that would be the one that would be of time essence, because otherwise we will appropriate all those funds and they'll be one-time funds. The rest of it, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, if there's other funds that once they're appropriated, we wouldn't be able to do anything with. Randy?
If I may, excuse me, what I would suggest is, we will have budget amendments, in the first quarter, like and things. If there are other items that the board wishes to do at that time, that would be a good time to make budget amendments. In regards to the Doris Morrison Learning Center, I anticipate that we will have some additional monies, one-time monies that will potentially carry forward into 24, that we could use those one-time monies for the purposes that you're stating, for the Doris Morrison Learning Center, or other items as well. So even if we said we didn't do the Doris Morrison, or excuse me, if we didn't do the Monsanto right now, I think we will have some one-time monies carrying forward from 23 to 24 that we could use for that. For example, we had some contingencies built into the 23 budget that we may not use all of it.
Well, and I think on the Monsanto, though, it's as Commissioner Jordan has pointed out, I mean, the funds were for a purpose. I mean, and no, we can roll them into the general fund. We do have that opportunity, but also just like the opioid dollars, we want to be using those dollars. They're specifically for a purpose. I can see where at least dedicating some of these dollars towards what the purpose of the lawsuit was for would be appropriate. So, I mean, I'm similar to, as I've made the road shift in the past, I've always wanted most of the money going back into roads. I see the same purpose as Commissioner Jordan on this one, where some of that money should be going back into water quality, water education, to help people so we don't have this issue in the future.
Just let us know what the amount is, and we can make those changes.
Yeah, like I said, that's a problem doing it this late in the game instead of a couple of months ago to then determine what that is, because it does mean we've got to look at what was put into the funds, settlement funds were used for in the current budget as you have projected versus what we think would be needed at Doris Morrison, and hoping, I think we talked about at the sewer committee meeting that hopefully in the future, some of the education dollars would be able to go towards Doris and Morrison in the future when we look to the renewal of the aquifer protection fee. So I see this as maybe a one-time funding opportunity, but also looking at what you have in the budget, I don't have it in front of me to know exactly what capital projects would then need to be re-looked at. But then if you're saying there's potential other funds for those capital projects, then that gives us that opportunity. Commissioner Jordan?
I was just going to clarify, is that additional one-time funds, is that the unspent contingency from this year? And how much is that roughly, if you can kind of project it?
Some of that is unspent contingency. Yes. We had also received a few other one-time monies this last year. The Kalispell tribe, that payment. There was this local assistance and tribal consistency fund. So all told, I would estimate between the carryover and those other one-time monies, we're probably looking at $1.5 to $2 million of additional one-time funds that we could swap out for capital if we wanted to use some of the Monsanto settlement for other purposes.
And some of those are still uncertain as to, like for the Spokane tribe, we didn't.
This is not the Spokane tribe. This was the Kalispell tribe. So
Okay.
these are monies we actually did receive.
Okay, we have figured out. Okay. Mr. Simmons.
Just a couple of quick comments on a few of the proposals. So for our grants team, we have 4 people on our grants team right now. The position that we're utilizing for the ARPA is funded out of ARPA, so it's not coming out of general fund. So if there's a desire to do this, really doesn't need to take place until 2027 budget, because we're funded for all the compliance and monitoring through ARPA dollars through 2026. And then the rideshare right now is, I believe it's for district court and superior court and municipal court. So district court specifically, we provide those services to every jurisdiction in the county, except if they have their own municipal court. So either you'd need to determine up front that if you're going to fund this, the county's paying for all these other jurisdictions for rideshare for them, or you'd need to carve those out and see what each of the jurisdictions' individual responsibilities would be and whether they want to be part of it or not. That would probably be very difficult for district court to then be able to manage a rideshare program to say, oh, only if you are unincorporated Spokane County. So I just highlight that for consideration.
Commissioner Waldorf, and then I'll go to Director Sparber.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Simmons, could I get information then on the full grants department? The 4 positions that you're talking about? Okay, because yeah, it's funny because I contacted and my office was in conversation. So we must have been talking about a different position that was funded out of the general fund. So could I get that full information? And then you're saying that ARPA funding, but is that a full-time permanent position? Or is it a temporary position?
It's funded through the end of the ARPA dollars through the end of 2026.
Okay,
Yep.
so we have some time to figure that one out.
Yep.
And so to your point on the RIDE program, right? The numbers that I provided, which are estimates based on looking at the months and, trying to, I was assuming we would continue to fund, folks for the district or superior. That's what I meant when I said county courts. And then the municipal court, is a choice. But yeah, I wouldn't be suggesting just funding folks in the unincorporated areas.
Yeah, I'm just highlighting the way it's set up right now.
County's
It's
responsible
paying
for those 2 courts.
but we're responsible for the courts, but we're not responsible for their offenders. If they're misdemeanor charges, gross misdemeanors in district court, it's the individual jurisdictions that have the responsibility for them. So if the county chooses to pay for everything, I just wanted to highlight that as a consideration.
And just to clarify, currently we are, because the MacArthur grant was for the entire region, paying for, even though municipal court is within the city of Spokane and they have their own court, we're paying for that through this program, which is in the future, we wouldn't be able to pay for, because it's not our responsibility. And it would be then the county taking that on, not a grant that was received to support all of it.
Yeah, with the current capstone, going back to Commissioner Jordan's, so it's meant to carry on existing projects that we have right now, which would be the 2 that we have, which is the rideshare program and a supported release program. And then developing a sustainability model at the other end of it. So I'm not actively pursuing any of the capstones with the 2 models that we have, but I just want to make you aware of that.
I just had a couple quick things just to close out. So Mr. Sparber, you're saying that Diane has not been collecting, she's not been doing that data analysis to date of the impact of the RIDE program on FTAs or other things we want to measure? Because I had thought earlier this year, we had said we were going to try and collect that, do that data analysis to actually, to know what the impact of the program actually is. All I know is every from the probation officers to pretrial to Superior Court to District Court, everybody noticed when the rideshare program went away. But again, that's not data to tell us what the actual impact is.
Right. And so I asked Diane, is there any direct correlation between the FTAs and the way we collect data? And she said, or is it just an assumption? And she's indicated it's just an assumption. So the way that it was set up originally was, if not for this, then that. And so that's why if you're going to redo it, if we're going to do this the right way, I would recommend that we set up some way to track that. At least start off with maybe a pilot through district court and then track the numbers through district court, see if it has an impact on the FTAs or the FTCs, and then look for a sustainability plan after that. The way it is right now, we're funding all of them, the city, pretrial services, everyone. And so collecting the actual data for it would be pretty difficult. So we need to go through one specific spot, which would either be pretrial services or it would be district court.
So we
So
could go back
narrow-
though. and
narrow
just-
it
Right, I
down, yeah.
totally hear what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
but we could go back and look at the district court from the last year
Sure.
and see that those who took advantage of the program
And that'd
see
probably be
what
a
that-
worthwhile effort to do
Yeah,
that, to
I think
see
it
what that,
would.
it's same with court date reminders. And I think that's what we were talking about, is the court date reminders and the uptrust program that we have right now. What is the impact? What is being impacted by it before we make any recommendations going forward?
And my last quick question is just, sorry, the title of it here, I just want to confirm that the Scraps Community Relations and Development Officer is still on the books. That position hasn't been removed. It's still a position at Scraps that is an opportunity. Just, anyway, that was my last question, just because it was unclear whether it had been removed or if it was still there and just not funded. So just want to make sure I understand it clearly if we're going to make any choices, in the next year about that position.
I'm looking on page 14 in your binder, which lists all the Scraps positions. I do not see that one listed specifically. I don't believe so. I'd have to confirm that for you, but I do not see that as a listed position.
I see Ashley has raised her hand, so we'll see if she can answer that.
Yeah, so it's not an approved or funded position. It hasn't been for several years. If we do add that position back, we would go through, work with the department to update the class specification, and then go ahead and get it graded and funded. But it has not been utilized for at least 3 years, so it is not currently an approved or a funded position.
Thank you. Commissioner Kearns.
So Mike, I want to talk about, when you talk about the ride share and kind of doing sort of data analysis on that, how do we get around the situation we were faced with when we were evaluating Uptrust? A lot of people said, well, those that are getting the text reminders are the ones that are showing up for their court dates. And then when asked the question of, is it that the update is what is making them show up, or is it just that it's the individuals who are responsible enough to sign up to get the updates were going to show up anyway? They're responsible enough to show up for their court date. They're responsible enough to, sure, here's my phone number, send me a text notification. And essentially at the time when I posed that to the former public defender, his response was essentially, yeah, there's no way for us to measure that. We don't know. That might be the case, it might not. There's really no way to know. So how do we get around knowing, is it the ride share that's getting people there, or people utilizing it that could have hopped on a bus, could have asked somebody for a ride, or hopped in their own car, and this is a way where they don't have to pay for parking when they come down here? I mean, so how do we balance those things when trying to measure, is this successful, or is this just successful for the people who would have shown up anyway and found a different mode of transportation?
Well, I don't think we answer that question. I think
Okay.
it's either or.
All right.
But what I'm referring to is tracking the FDA data to the case level. So how many case to resolutions are being addressed by having additional phone call? It's not going to answer the question totally. Would they have done it anyway? But at least if we start looking at things that actually make a reduction, seem to make a reduction in FTAs, it would be something I would bring to the board and say, okay, this is what the data is suggesting. It's not absolute. So, yeah.
And then I guess my question, or Ashley or budget, whoever, did Scraps, I thought, did they have a plan for that community relations? I'm trying to remember what they said when they came in and presented. Was that something they wanted this year, or was that something they said down the road they looked to reintroduce? I'm trying to remember what their request was on that position.
So
didn't-
they actually included it last year, when we went through and we did the presentation of position asks for 2023 budget. It was one of their asks for 2023, which we weren't able to fund for this year. So then when they came back, it was, if they are able to get it, and if there is interest in funding, they would love to have it for the future for 2024. But it wasn't something that they had submitted this year, recognizing that we had all been asked to take a look at our headcount and really ask, what do we need and not need, not knowing what budgets will look like for 2024. So in the event the commissioners do have funding available, it's definitely one that group could utilize, and that could be incredibly helpful out there. But they did not submit it this year since we were all asked to sharpen our pencils a little bit and be thoughtful around what monies were potentially available in 2024.
Thank you.
So I want to say thank you for bringing these items forward, because I think some, definitely have merit and worthy of further discussions as we move forward. I don't know. I think each commissioner handles it differently. So like I said, I think this will be one of the things that we probably want to talk about, how we work through this in the future. So that way we aren't doing it, right at the end and then having all the questions and just because, as we know, when we have individual questions and discussions with department heads or employees, we can get different answers than what other department heads know as well. So that's why it's important for us to then come to the full board and really have a discussion at the board level to make sure that we're all in agreement or not as we move forward and then how we fund it. Because I know, like on ARP dollars at this point in time, we don't have any extra ARP dollars. They're all allocated. Not that we won't have some additional ARP dollars come back to us. But that was also part of the discussion with the fires, was that we were taking some of it with what we did have unallocated, that was coming back. We used for the fire for our 25% match, and then the rest was coming out of fund balance. So at this point in time, I don't know that there's any others. There could be as we move forward on contracts, but just to clarify on that we have ARP dollars available. I don't know, Jeff, if you want to speak to that, but it's my understanding that they're still allocated at this point, that they're not available yet.
Would appreciate that clarification.
It is correct. You guys have, my words right, there's allocated, obligated, awarded. You have allocated all of the dollars currently to categories. Categories 3 point, well, my number's off. The public sector categories, there was an administrative category, which we recently did when we were concerned about federal clawback. That category, as well as the public sector effective service delivery category, I believe they're 3.4 and 3.5. The language access stuff Commissioner Jordan is speaking about would qualify in those currently awarded, not awarded, funded categories. But those dollars also have been spoken for by the board via the ERP project and the facilities updates you talked about. So the projects that Commissioner Jordan is talking about certainly are qualified for ARP dollars. You have awarded categories that they could be used. However, you have spoken to the use of those dollars. Does that make it as clear as mud?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I thought we had some of the art when we made the moves earlier this year to put those all into allocated in terms of local dollars here at the county, rather than having them in a pot where we might allocate them out to other organizations, because we were concerned that the federal government might end up taking back some things that weren't allocated. I don't know if that's the right, but
Obligated is that word, but yes.
Yes, yes. So, but we put those into our own internal fund, but we have not decided how all those are going to be spent yet, correct?
When they were put in, I
Oh,
was under the impression the pot that has 8 million is for the ERP.
right.
And the pot that I think is 8466, if I have the last two numbers right, that was loosely for the windows of this building, the new parks building, some other facilities campus-wide. That included the roof at the fairgrounds, some of those projects. So there was a loose accounting of each dollar. However, those projects will come in differently than those exact dollar amounts as we go forward.
Okay, I see what you mean, but we haven't actually
They're not
allocated those
spent,
yet.
they're not awarded.
But we tied them to potential
You
capital
tied them to
projects.
potential projects that are identified.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Simmons. Oh, it's just
You go ahead.
Commissioner Jordan, you go first. and then
So
Ms. Wilson.
thanks for that, Jeff. It's also true that there is $100,000 that is available for this purpose if we so chose. That
If
is
the board so
eligible.
shows, yes.
Thank you.
You would have to those other kind of tentative things, but yes, the board is certainly capable of doing that or has the authority.
Mr. Simmons.
Yeah, the resolution that the board had passed for those internal funds were generally under two buckets. It was information technology, software, and facilities. Those were the two buckets that it was put into. And then a number of things that Jeff had highlighted are where things have been spent to date out of it.
But those are completely under the BOCC purview. They are obligated should the federal government decide to do some clawbacks, but until they're spent, the board can do what you will.
But when we passed the resolution on them,
Those are the understandings, yes.
those were the intents of what those dollars were going to be used for. So
Sorry,
Um,
I'm confused.
thank you. So like I said, the only one that I see that has to be dealt with before we approve the budget would be the Clearwater settlement funds. And so I think that would require more discussion. And we could take that up next week, right?
You guys can take that up next week. I
Okay.
will not be here, but Tessa and Scott will take care of that.
Thank you. Because I think that, we would need to have some further discussion if we look at moving some of those funds. So, so maybe even the next day or two to have a discussion with Commissioner Jordan and myself as to what that could look like. But again, I'm not, I don't want you guys to think that we're opposed to all these things, just lots of questions surrounding them and making sure that we identify that, again, a better process for all of us in the future. And then, looking at, those, I think these are all things that we can, if everyone looks to it, that these are worthy of funding, that, we can do that as we go into the first of next year. It doesn't have to be done in the next 2 weeks, because I think we're going to be pretty crunched for time. Especially as we know that Mr. Bischoff will be away for a little bit of that too. So, because we do need to approve the budget on the December 4th.
Thank you for that. And if there's interest in any of these things, I'm happy to work on getting questions answered. And I appreciate the staff's time in talking through some of these things, answering questions from myself and from Commissioner Waldorf about how much they would cost. So happy to collaborate on any of this.
Yeah, and honestly too, having the staff now be aware of these, I think it's important to meet with, thinking of it holistically, from from HR to, the budget office to the different departments that these all affect. What would be the opportunities? So thank you. Okay. It's afternoon, but we still have a few more things to do. So,
If I
Commissioner
could
Kearns.
throw out one of the, there was an incident last week in our office. One of our staff members found an individual in our copy room who was rummaging through our drawers and our cupboards looking for whiteout. Because again, an individual was told from the auditor's office to go down to the commissioner's office to get whiteout. So for a customer service standpoint, I would like, if there's a way for us through fund balance to fund up to $100 for the auditor's office to purchase whiteout for customers, so they no longer have to send them down to our office, and our staff don't have to be surprised when they find someone in our copy room / supply room rummaging through our drawers and our cupboards. So if you'd like to work that in, that'd be great. Or if somebody would like to have a conversation with our auditor and her staff, I'm sure that would greatly be appreciated.
Commissioner French.
I didn't catch that. Did you say up to $100? Is that adequate?
Up to. And we
Okay,
we can do a budget amendment halfway through the year if they burn through $100 worth of whiteout.
I would second that. Thank you.
I would think she could find that in her budget and just request that she figure that out.
She struggled to do it to date, so.
Well, I think there can be conversations to be had before we have to put $100 into the budget for the auditor. But yes, no, that's not, I would agree that it's not acceptable. So we need to figure that out. Let's see. So I just want to get back to our agenda. Is there any other miscellaneous items before we start to go down our miscellaneous?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, and then we do have one miscellaneous that I know too. So
This one I hope is very quickly. This is following up on the Superior Court's NCSC project and efficiency study. The NCSC team is going to be in Spokane from the December 5th to the 7th and possibly the morning of December 8th as well. And so to start working on scheduling, I wanted to inquire which board members were interested or still interested in participating. Obviously, these are either going to need to be set up as a special meeting for the entire board or as one or two at a time. So at this point, I think really all I need is to get who all wants to participate or is potentially available those dates, and then I will forward that to Superior Court and the board staff to coordinate from there.
okay. Commissioner French, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I clearly would like to be part of this. And then also, will we be providing this outside group a copy of the last study that was provided that showed the Superior Court scored a whopping 68 out of 100? And the fact that none of those recommendations have been followed up on, will that also be provided to them?
Well, this group's very aware of that since they did the study.
Okay. Well, because they did
It's
it,
quite-
doesn't mean it's the same people that were there last time and stuff. So just want to make sure that the last study was made available to them.
Yeah, it's the same people doing it. Literally the same people at the same organization.
Excellent. Thank you.
Maybe it's easier to do it this way. Is there anybody who's not interested in participating in this? All right, I will forward everybody the relevant information to get that scheduled.
Yeah, and it may be hard to do a special meeting, so I would probably suggest that it's going to be, one-offs or two-offs, just to try to make it happen with the busy schedules coming up.
Certainly.
Okay. Okay, you need to come down. If anyone has any questions or comments, I need to have you come down so you can be on a mic for Commissioner French. So feel free. Mr.
you picked the date for the legislative agenda briefing.
Mhm.
Sitting here this morning, we've received emails learning it's conflicting with ESD 101's annual superintendent meeting. That's from 10 to 12. And you guys had chose 11:15 to 12:15, so there's a 45-minute overlap. Just wanted to be aware, I think that's a fairly competitive head-to-head.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to look at calendars again or move forward as planned. The invite went out last week. We don't have any RSVPs. We have some notifications of conflict.
I think our conflict was, we've got the Health District Board meeting at 12:30 on that day. So,
I don't have solutions. I'm just bringing problems.
yes. No, so I think as we look at calendars, I think we'll need to look at changing.
Well, that was our conflict that day as of for going later, but I mean, there were other dates thrown out as well, and maybe we have to look at another date.
Yeah.
So
Do we do a doodle poll?
I'm happy to work with your offices individually. Do you guys, can we narrow it down a little bit? Do you want to keep the same week? Which is next week at this point?
I say do a doodle poll, throw out like 2 weeks worth of dates, and we may luck out and find one that works for all of us. What do you think?
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then it doesn't, but who
Right.
knows? There may be that
I do-
time slot that works perfect.
I do think we were trying to look at that week of the 4th, right? Because of vacations starting the next week.
Yes.
Okay. I agree, doodle poll or
I
other type of software poll.
think that may be the easiest than all of us trying to look at our calendars right now and try to figure it out.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Director Sparber.
Madam Chair, I'm just gonna make a request to be at that meeting as well for the data for the Superior Court.
You should get in touch with Ashley Cowan to set something up because there are going to be individual meetings
Okay,
that week.
will do. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Kearns and Commissioner Jordan. You have a, Yes,
Commissioner
anything?
Jordan brought to our attention the Mount Spokane girls softball team or slow pitch softball team won the state championship. So we're hoping to do a proclamation honoring them. And so looking for head nods to go ahead. The proclamation is already drafted and in your packet. And I know Gina has been working with to see if we can narrow down a date that works. Do we have a date? No date. Okay. So still working on a date to have them come in here. I had spoken with the athletic director at Mount Spokane, and he was going to try to get some of the athletes to come down and be here for the proclamation as well. And so is everybody all right with that? Again, don't have a date yet.
Thanks, Commissioner Kearns, for making the calls to the school district. That'll be fun, and I'm hoping that with the timing, we can just try to maximize the number of students we get down here and otherwise go Wildcats.
I was waiting to hear, in fact, I just got a text maybe that West Valley School District, their girls soccer team was in the state finals this weekend. And so not sadly, congratulations on them because they did take second place. It went to a shootout and they lost 3-1. So shootouts are tough. So it's awesome, but no, that's volleyball.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we have another one.
Is that
So,
need? Yeah.
so yeah. So anyway, you can say that as soon as I'm done here. So I just want to say congratulations to the West Valley girls soccer team, the best that they have ever done in state. And so that's exciting to see our local teams. And I am happy to move forward with the proclamation for Meade.
And yet, so Commissioner Keeney brought that up. Also wanted to mention, regionally, we are killing it this year. The Meade ladies volleyball team also won the state 3A championships. Looks like that happened this weekend. So
Could be worthy of a dual
we may
proclamation.
have to
That
do
would
another
be
one.
very bipartisan to
Yeah.
have Meade and Mount Spokane.
So no, I think that'd be very exciting. We've done that in the past. I think Central Valley School District girls basketball, when they won the national championship, was kind of the first time that we had the opportunity to do it as a national championship. And so we've tried to, as our local teams of one state, to bring them in and highlight them. So excited to do that.
Commissioner Kearns, do you want me to reach out to Mead and try to invite them?
Up to you.
Split the duties on
Maybe,
that?
maybe if
It
we. if
goes
we could-
against my principles to reach out to Mead, but I can, I can sacrifice for the kids.
The school
For the youth.
itself is
Yeah.
in your district. so-
Well, I'd be happy to place a call.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be great to have a dual proclamation and be able to do both of them at the
Do 'em
same
both on
time.
the-
And
Both on the same day?
Yeah.
Do just read one, read the second,
yep.
of all the athletes here.
And then, so just coordinate with Gina as she's coordinating schedules. And you'll want to make sure you're just talking to the superintendent as well for the school district, because usually the superintendent or some board members may want to attend. Okay, is there anything else to come before us today? Oh, wait, there's a hand.
I have
Mr.
one
Simmons.
short exec session item.
Okay,
So it's to discuss acquisition or lease of real estate under RCW 4230 110-1B. In addition to the board, Chris Anderson and myself will be Jeff McMorrison, Randy Bischoff. 5 minutes, no action.
Commissioner French, I heard you pop up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, in the spirit of wishing everybody a happy holiday, I just hope that the only turkey you have to deal with this week is in the oven. Thank you. Have a great holiday.
We knew it was coming. Thank you very much. Yes, so, okay, so we are going to go into executive session to discuss real estate matters for 5 minutes for the people stated by Mr. Simmons. At the end of that, we will adjourn. And so, yes, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and really wish you have an enjoyable time with